Look, I've got to be honest with you right off the bat. Ben Stiller just dropped something that's making everyone rethink everything they thought they knew about him as a parent. And trust me, this isn't your typical celebrity confession where they just gloss over the uncomfortable stuff. So Ben's got this new documentary about his legendary parents, Jerry Stiller and Han Mara. And while he's honoring their legacy, his own kids basically came out and said something that would make any parent's heart sink. And here's where it gets really interesting, because his daughter Ella straight up told him she can't remember him being around during her childhood. I mean, can you imagine hearing that from your own kid? But wait, because there's actually a deeper layer to this whole situation that explains why Hollywood parents struggle with this exact problem. And Ben's son, Quinn, is about to reveal something even more brutal. Quinn basically confirmed what Ella said, but he took it a step further and explained that being a dad sometimes felt like it wasn't even at the top of Ben's priority list. Which is wild when you think about how we see these celebrities on screen and assume they've got it all figured out. Now here's what's fascinating about Quinn's explanation, because he didn't just throw his dad under the bus, he actually broke down the psychology of what was happening. Quinn said that after a tough day or when something went wrong, Ben would get into his own head, and once he was in that mental space, it was nearly impossible to pull him out of it, which honestly explains so much about why successful people sometimes fail at the things that matter most. But the part that really hit different was when Quinn talked about vacations, because you'd think that's when a parent would be most present, right? Wrong, because Quinn revealed that Ben's mental state would actually put a damper on what should have been the fun part of family time. And that's when you realize this isn't just about being physically absent, it's about being emotionally checked out even when you're right there. And then Quinn dropped this observation that I think every kid of a workaholic has felt at some point. He said Ben was trying to balance all these different hats like director, actor, producer, and writer, but being a father sometimes came last to all those other things. Now, before you start thinking this is just a hit piece on Ben Stiller, hold on, because there's actually a redemption arc happening here that makes this whole story way more complex than it seems. See, Ben recently opened up at the New York Film Festival about his dad Jerry saving everything, like audio recordings, film, tape, television appearances, scripts, literally everything. And as a kid, Ben found it super annoying. He even said his mom was annoyed too, and they'd always be asking when Jerry was finally going to throw all that stuff out. But here's the plot twist that changes everything. Ben now realizes there's something incredibly valuable about saving physical media, especially in this digital age where nothing feels permanent anymore. And he actually feels lucky to have lived in a generation that has those tangible pieces of history. So basically, Ben went through the exact same cycle with his dad that his kids are going through with him, which makes you wonder if this is just an unavoidable pattern in entertainment families, or if there's a way to break it. But wait, there's more to this story, because Ben's relationship with his daughter Ella has its own complicated history that ties into all of this. They separated for a while, but eventually got back together, and Ben's philosophy on making relationships work is actually pretty simple but profound. He says you just have to want to be together and want to make it work. Now that might sound obvious, but when you're dealing with Hollywood schedules and massive career pressures, that commitment becomes infinitely harder to maintain. And Ben admits he feels really lucky that both he and Christine got to a place where they could value what they had and genuinely want to make it work. So what's the real takeaway from all of this? Because I think what Ben Stiller is doing here is actually pretty brave, and not a lot of celebrities would let their kids openly criticize their parenting in a documentary for the world to see. He's essentially admitting that he messed up, that he prioritized his career over his family at times, and that his kids have every right to feel the way they do about their childhood. But he's also showing that it's never too late to acknowledge your mistakes and try to do better, even if you can't go back and change the past. The fact that his kids are now in their 20s and can have these honest conversations with him suggests that despite the absence they felt growing up, there's still a foundation of love and respect there. And honestly, I think that's what makes this story resonate with so many people, because how many of us have parents who worked their tails off to provide for us, but weren't always emotionally present when we needed them? It's a universal struggle that transcends Hollywood, but seeing someone as famous as Ben Stiller deal with it so publicly makes it feel less isolating. What really gets me is how Quinn described the specific way Ben would disconnect, getting into his own head and being impossible to reach, because that's not malicious or intentional neglect. That's someone struggling with their own mental and emotional capacity while trying to juggle an impossible number of responsibilities. It doesn't excuse the impact on his kids, but it does humanize the situation in a way that's important to understand. And the irony of Ben now appreciating his father's archiving obsession after years of finding it annoying just proves that we often don't understand our parents' choices until we're older and facing similar dilemmas ourselves. The cycle continues. The lessons get passed down, and hopefully each generation does slightly better than the last, which seems to be what's happening here with Ben and his kids having these open dialogues. So while this documentary was supposed to be about Jerry Stiller and Ann Mara's incredible legacy, it ended up being just as much about Ben confronting his own shortcomings and his kids bravely speaking their truth. And that's the kind of raw honesty that actually means something in an industry that's usually all about maintaining perfect public images.